Is St. Patrick's Day a scam? It's okay.
Ugh.
It's okay if we're getting canceled today, but we're gonna have a good
Uh-huh.
time doing it. Everybody, welcome to our St. Patrick's Day quiz. I love St. Patrick's Day. I'm sure everybody does. Everybody has a great time on St. Patrick's Day. I'm also part of the Bernadette Short School of Irish Dance. I grew up in an Irish community,
Cool.
in and part of the Innisfada in and around Mineola. So this I have grown up with all my life. And
Okay.
today we're going to be debunking a
Hmm.
lot of the ideas of what St. Patrick's Day and what is about and who St. Patrick was, because I don't think a lot of people know.
No.
And unlike the other Irish saints, unlike many saints in general, we do actually have uh, lots of writing about him, as opposed to hagiographies, as opposed to other people writing
Yeah.
about him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So first question, Soup, is going to be so this is the lovely Mark from Archeo Soup, for those of
Yeah.
us
I was wondering if we needed to introduce me or not.
who has been with us on all the quizzes and debunking myths before. Uh,
Uh-huh.
Mark is going to take tally of his answers. You could take tally of your answers at home if you
Hmm.
like. And we're going to just kick it off with number one.
Yeah.
Was St. Patrick a real person?
I don't know how far to go with this. I'm just going to do yes or no because there are other questions that are implied in there that you may well be about to ask me. So I'm going to say yes.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Yes, good. Give yourself a point. So
Excellent.
as far as we know, and I had a bit of a spicy question when we had Professor Ronald Hutton on, and somebody did ask him, was he a real person? And as I said just before, for many of the saints, a lot of their lives are legendary, right? A lot of their
Hmm.
writing
Hmm.
comes either 100 years after they've died. We have, as far as we know, we have two pieces of writing that St. Patrick wrote in his own hand.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
two letters that he
Hmm.
wrote by himself from the fourth century. His letter, the Confessio, which is the very famous letter that he wrote to British bishops at the end of his life, explaining his tour in Ireland, because apparently he was not supposed to be there. It's a
Right.
it's
Yeah.
a it's a
Mm.
full description of his career, in his own words. But we do have to take it with a tiny, tiny pinch of salt because it is in his own words, so
Hmm.
we don't
Hmm.
know how biased it is.
Hmm.
And then there's a second longer letter in his own handwriting. And again, it's more just about his life, and two sources don't really contradict each other, but both of those are in his own hand. And we think he died, according to his letters, either around 460 or 480. We're not really sure, but he was a real person.
Hmm.
We do have those two pieces. There are, but obviously the most famous writing about him is probably his Vitae, by Muirchu, and another by Bishop Tirchan, both claiming to draw on earlier sources. But those earlier sources are either lost or made up. We don't know,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they are the ones that start all the sensational claims, like Patrick did miracles, and
Hmm.
things
Hmm.
that he didn't mention in his own writing.
Okay.
There was at one time as well, there was a popular theory that there might have been two Patricks. Every historian I have asked has said that that theory is now, oh, with the Guinness soup,
Yeah. Yeah. I was waiting for you to notice.
with
Yeah.
the Guinness, or is
Hmm.
that, or is it Beamish?
Oh, no,
Any,
no, no. It is Guinness. It is Guinness. It is Guinness. It's actual Irish from Dublin.
I
Yeah.
I did I did a bit of a blasphemy last night at our local Irish night, and they did have non-alcoholic Guinness from.
Hmm. Hmm.
I have to say, I was very impressed, very
Yeah.
impressed. I did
Yeah.
not think that was going to be good.
No.
It gets my blessing. I was quite surprised.
This is the
That,
0%
that
stuff. Yeah.
it
Amazing.
tastes
It tastes
almost
really good.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fantastic. Highly
Hmm.
recommended. Thanks, Guinness.
Yeah.
So,
Sponsored by.
but I wish. Sponsored by the patron saint himself. So good job, Mark. You got one
Thank
right.
you.
Number two,
Uh-huh.
and I know you know the answer to this one.
Okay.
Was St. Patrick Irish?
No.
Yes, that's correct. He was
Now,
not Irish.
now, are we going to get a follow-up?
So I didn't put it in the points because, so go ahead, say what you were, or ask what you were going to ask.
Okay. Do do you think we know where Patrick himself was actually from?
So he says in his confessio that
Hmm.
he um was born in Britain, he was
Hmm.
a Britanno-Roman. He says he was born in a place called Baniam to Bernie, and that is somewhere, so it's either somewhere along the Welsh English border or it's somewhere in Cumbria.
Yeah.
We do not know anything beyond that. There are some guesses as to
Mm.
where that might be, but
Hmm.
he does say it in his own writing, so we believe him that he was from somewhere along there. So
Yeah.
Baniam to Bernie is all we have to go on,
And
really.
it's very interesting. So lots of people obviously claim him as Welsh, uh, Cymro in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go over to Carlisle Cathedral, I was actually amazed to learn this when I went over there, to see that actually within the cathedral they sort of claim him as essentially a in-house saint, up there on the northwest English coast. So what is now the northwest English coast. So it's interesting how Patrick is, I think, a real person, but actually tying him down is quite hard. Uh, it's interesting also. I think it's a good insight into how people thought of themselves at that time, isn't it? How he described himself. It didn't seem to matter whether he had that sort of Iron Age cultural background. He was
No,
Romano British.
he didn't. It seems like he didn't really, because they didn't really have that sense of, I
No.
guess the sense of nationalism at the time belonged to
Mm.
Rome, and
Yeah.
he didn't have that, right? So
No.
because even though he was a Romano Brit, I guess we
Hmm.
could say, he says his grandfather was a priest. He says his father was not a bishop, but somebody holy. And he himself, he claims that he himself was not a believer when he was young.
Mm.
He claims, so for just his origin story, he claims that he was taken by Irish raiders as a slave at 16. He
Uh-huh.
claims he was enslaved as a pig farmer, which I don't know why, I think is very funny to find your spiritual self as a pig farmer in County Mayo. And so now and then there are two conflicting things about this. He was taken to be a pig farmer in Mayo, and he claims that he was in the rain and that he was starving, etc. But he claims that he just worked for a dude, and then later sources claimed he worked for an evil druid. So
Oh.
we don't know if that bit's embellished or if he actually did work for a druid. No, we don't know. He
I mean, to be fair, there are three possibilities there. There's a dude, a druid, or an
and an
evil
evil druid.
druid.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
In the early Irish medieval sources, druids are heroes. It's
mm, mm,
But again, we don't know. We know very, very little about
no,
them, and most of our what
mm,
we do know about them comes from third-party sources, like
mm.
Romans, who lied about quite a few things. But in his own words,
Embellished for the home audience.
no, it's okay. The Romans are dead. We could say they lied. But,
Okay, fair enough.
he, like I said, he says that he was not a complete Christian at the time when
Hmm.
he was
Hmm.
taken as a slave. We don't know what that means. He just says in his own writing that he wasn't a full believer. We have no idea what that means other than that. He claims his parents were also Romano Brits, Romanized Celts, and he claims that when he was out in the fields with the pigs, he heard a voice that he claimed was an angel, that said that he would one day walk across Ireland. And so when he did, we don't know, however, how he escaped, how he saved himself from slavery, or if he bought
Mm,
himself out. No idea. That part is mysteriously skipped over in the story.
mm,
So we have
mm,
no idea. And there is a theory, however,
hmm,
that, and I personally don't think that this is true, but there are some historians who theorize that it's possible that the whole slavery story might have been made up to make pagans look bad. I don't think that's true, because in his own writing, he doesn't claim that the person that he worked for was evil. He doesn't. I mean, he talks
mm,
about him being lonely and starving in biblical language, and a lot of the
mm,
things that he wrote in his Confessio were embellishments for
Hmm.
in biblical language, because you can see but he was at the end of his life when he wrote it. So again, we don't know how much of his own writing was embellished.
Yeah.
Mirhu, the famous 7th century Life of Patrick, chapters 15 through 22, contain an account of a festival of idolatry with many conjurations, feasts, and sorcery, sundry of heathen superstitions, held at Tara by pagan King Leary. But we don't know, again, we don't know. He claims that this was at the time of Easter, which
Hmm.
is possibly also why he got associated with this time of year. It is notable, however, that Mirhu himself says that whatever was going on when Patrick was taken, that was not that was an irregular event, and that the whole episode of him being taken into slavery might have been a fable, or it could be that Patrick was misremembering and it was in memory of some kind of fesh or inauguration feast. But there's a lot of this that is still a question mark. Um,
Well, there are also, again, we don't know, so we can't we can't be right, but also we can't necessarily be wholly wrong,
mhm.
um, because I mean, there's also the possibility of formal movements of children to other families. That does
Yes,
happen and did happen.
quite often, actually.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and so I mean, and again, I know it's a later Irish joke, but the joke being that you send the thick kid off to the seminary to
Hmm.
be to be the to
That
be the
was my
priest.
uncle.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Now, obviously, that's not necessarily what happened here, but the idea of maybe being transferred to another family for care, or being sent into the service of another family,
Hmm.
um, could be understood as being enslaved, possibly. But it's intriguing. I mean, either way, it's interesting that he certainly had one status and a certain lack of belief in what he would later believe,
Hmm.
and then changed. So that is an intriguing story, definitely. Yeah. Mm.
It
Sorry, although as far as angelic voices go, obviously I imagine Fuji-san's just appearing in the field. Hey, Patrick.
telling everybody how you doing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, that'd be so terrifying if it was
I'm
his.
here for the babes, but there are pigs everywhere. Oh no.
He came for the festival. He was told
Yeah,
there was going to be babes in food.
yeah. Although
Uh,
he probably get along quite well with Slemish, though. I think. Yeah,
oh,
I can
it's
imagine
great.
that.
Having a
Anyway,
grand
so
old time on King Leary's table.
mhm,
Okay, so give yourself a point there, Mark.
thank you. Yep.
Good job, good job. Here's a little bit of a harder one,
Okay.
and I would love to hear from you why. So,
Hmm.
number 3, was Patrick his real name?
Um, is this like asking if Jesus was called Joshua? Like, in that sense, okay, I'm gonna say uh, it's as good as his name, but probably not.
Ah!
Ah!
At least from his own. Okay, so I
Oh,
was waiting.
brutal.
I was waiting for you to say that his actual Romano name was Patricus, because that is what everybody knows.
Oh, was it? So I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Okay.
But that's not exactly his real name either. So Patricus was the
Right.
name that he claims to have given himself. Patricus obviously come from Patra, the father,
Uh-huh.
right? But he claims that his name was Mewin Sukat, and that he gave himself the name of Patricus when he, I guess, converted, or when he decided to. We don't know if he was actually ever a bishop, because
Right.
according to his confessio, he was not supposed to be in Ireland, and it's not necessarily clear why. So we don't know if he decided to take it upon himself, ordain himself. We don't know, but yeah. So he claims that his name was Mewin Suket, and that he ended up
How do you
being.
spell that? Sorry.
According to the source, it is Maewyn space Succat.
Excellent. Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
Yeah, and as well, you may know that especially for Irish, Old Irish, Irish is a cute Celtic language,
Mm,
and P names therefore are always foreign, or
yeah,
usually foreign source, right?
yeah.
Um,
But presumably you know this demonstration of the PQ difference, but
mhm,
a good one would be the word for head. So in Welsh, you got a pen is where it's at the moment,
mhm.
and in Irish, I've forgotten exactly what it is, but it has a cut at the beginning, doesn't it?
Probably a better one. So, for example,
I'm
in
imagining there's a cut with like lift music, and we'll be back with you in a second.
so, how do
So,
you what's the do you say in Welsh? Do you say buka for instead of puka?
uh, I don't know actually, because I don't think I ever came across that as a child.
Okay,
But okay.
but
Do
yes,
you know
Mark,
what?
you are right. Is that
I'm
the
terribly sorry. I've taken us down a terrible rabbit hole.
No, I
Um,
remember. I remember though the best was our Valentine's Day quiz. If you haven't watched it, go watch it because Mark had a great moment where he came in with facts and he paused and then he went, "I have come to you with half a fact."
half a fact. Yeah, indeed. Go away, do better.
No, just absolutely wrecked me. It's so good. The pause and everything was so good. It's okay. It's okay. But that's what I, give yourself 0.5 on that one. Give yourself
Okay.
0.5 on that one.
Well,
Because
actually,
you,
to be fair, I've already given you the whole point because Patricus, I didn't know.
I
If you'd
I was
said Patricus, I would have thought you were taking the mick actually. So
no piss taking on the show.
okay.
But actually, you know what? Here's a good piss taking question.
Sorry, yes, Irish for head, Ceann,
Okay, now yeah.
something like Ken.
Hmm.
Kidding. Yes, exactly. So Ken. I knew it. Bendigedig. Right, okay. Right.
Well done, up Wales. So
Cumbrian beef. Right, okay, on you go.
was Patrick a nipple sucker?
I mean, we all have been at some point, surely.
This not all of us. Not all of us.
No, I
Well,
suppose not. Actually, I suppose not. No. That yeah. If you're born and your mother dies, then maybe not. So, which nipples?
very interesting. So whose nipples are we talking
Yeah,
about?
nipples.
So he claims that in order to escape Ireland, the ship's
Uh-huh.
master forced people to suck their nipples, and he refused to do so. Now, for people who are reading this on a surface level, this may seem extremely strange because there's a lot of in a lot of the medieval Irish texts, there's a lot of reference to people having nipples, people sucking other people's nipples. However,
Uh-huh.
this is very possibly a biblical reference, and this is often used to put ancient pagan practices in a very bad light. Um,
Okay.
and in the Bible, suckling or nipple sucking is an act of subservience. But he claims that he refused, he would not do it, he refused to do it, and therefore he got stuck in Ireland for a little while longer. But
It just makes me think of Mark Hamill in episode 7, with the blue milk.
that didn't
And he's
happen.
just there, just
We're
dripping down
pretending
his
that didn't
beard.
happen.
Yeah. The
It
blue
didn't.
milk.
I mean, to be fair, that was filmed on Skellig Michaels.
Exactly. There you go. There you go. He had to do that just to get back to the mainland to get the plane home. Like, they were like, do it, Mark. The camera's rolling. Action. Um, I didn't know about that. That's interesting. And so is it to uh make the people who would offer passage seem unreasonable, seem exploitative,
It does seem so.
and insist on subservience? Yeah.
It is a trope that does exist in a lot of early
Right.
medieval Irish literature, and it
Okay.
is often to make people who were not Christian seem very strange or put them in a bad light. We don't
Right.
know if he was saying that or doing that necessarily in the specific instance, but it does
Hmm.
seem so, because why else would you mention it? And again, it's a very biblical reference.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Because when
Interesting.
you're reading it and you think, oh, I wanted passage of the boat, and the man said I had to suck his nipples, and you just sit there going, I
Well,
know.
when we get the ferry to see the in-laws in County Antrim, I will be horrified if they ask us to do that. You know, they can check the vehicle a wee bit. They can insist that we can't go down to the car on the actual
How much is
voyage.
that
But
ferry? How much is the ticket on the ferry?
oh, it's got more expensive. I
And
think it was.
I'll tell you this for nothing. I'd rather suck a nipple than pay it. We can clip that.
That's a good point. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, this guy's a good. Well, go on then, and you're like, oh, yeah. But then you get more money for the arcade on board. So there you go.
See,
Exactly.
see,
Yeah. Yeah.
again, I don't see this as a bad thing. Being a nipple
No.
sucker is not a bad thing at all. So here's a controversial question, Mark.
Yep.
Did St. Patrick bring Christianity to Ireland?
Oh, oh, oh. I'm gonna say no, in so much
Correct.
as
Correct.
I'm presuming it was a multifaceted event. There
Y
was multiple seedings and
Yes,
everything.
actually, and he was not the
Okay.
first. There were
Okay.
we know from sources that Christians were already in Ireland from third
Yeah.
century.
Mm.
Palladius was the very, at least we know in writings, Palladius
Hmm.
was the very first one who wrote about missionizing to Ireland. Then that's long pre-Patrick. It's possible that the whole story of Patrick bringing Christianity to Ireland was made
Hmm.
up by his followers in order to link him to the Jesus story. As well, we know from archaeological records that County Kerry and not Mayo is the place where Christianity most likely started in Ireland.
Mm.
Maybe, but we don't know. We don't really know how many Christians there were, but we do know it was there. Patrick claims that when he went back to Ireland to missionize, um, after he had the whole thing with the angels saying that he should go back, he went back to Mayo, and there were people, or he claims that people called him the Holy Boy, which I think is very funny. He writes about himself suffering and being beaten up on the journey back to Ireland.
Uh-huh.
He does not talk about followers in his own
Right.
writings. That came later. So
Followers as in disciples or as an established congregation or
both really. I mean, it
right.
depends on, because in seventh century sources there they say that he did have followers. Some of them are named, obviously, and
Right.
then as the stories progressed, they make it sound like he had a retinue of people who were
Yeah.
following him,
Yeah.
including my favorite story, which is Werewolves of Ossory, which predated Patrick, but then they kind of tacked Patrick on as the person who cursed them.
Oh.
So yeah, so there is that. And again, they claim that he had a retinue of people who were with him at the time. But even Patrick's own writing, he never mentions anybody else. Palladius in the 5th century said he went to meet with Christians who were already there. In some stories, Patrick is claimed to have converted kings at Tara, like King Leary. But there
Hmm.
are other sources that say that King Leary never converted to Christianity before he died, and that much of these stories that were tacked on were all lifted from the Bible. Patrick
Mm.
himself in his
Well, to be
Confessio.
fair, he would have gone from being leery to chaste, wouldn't he? Sorry,
Oh,
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
that's such a good nuanced joke. I hope people get it. Fantastic.
I
Um,
swear, there's no alcohol.
so it's yeah, but most of the drunkenness is always pretend anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. So yeah, I'm not. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. Yeah, on you go.
Uh, that's it. Patrick himself in his Confessio never mentioned that he was at Tara, never mentioned that he converted kings.
Right.
And he really just focused on himself and his career. And we do know that he was not the first in Ireland, and that Christianity was already there. So it is
Mm.
possible that from third century, which is when we know that there were already Christians in Ireland, up
Hmm.
until seventh century, that it was again a very gradual overtaking of the
Well, but
island.
Yeah, and but also as well, this is where elements of things like the Mabinogion come in.
Hmm.
There's lots of it's evident that crossing the Irish Sea happened a lot. There was lots of cultural transfer. There's hints at marriages which are
Hmm.
embodied in the mythological people, but also um it's Mrs. Soup's uncle is he's a very passionate local historian for his part of the north of the Republic, so
Hmm.
just on the border of Northern Ireland. And there's an area around there that he once told. I think the problem is I can't fully remember because we were both drinking real Guinness at the time. But he told me this long rambling story about some place names that began with Llan,
Hmm.
which is Welsh for church. So he was suggesting that that there might be some Christianity being planted from Wales that isn't Patrick, but is other people moving in and setting up almost little communities, maybe even a transfer of people back and forth.
Oh, absolutely. We
Which,
have
yeah,
tons of records from people going from like the Déisi, or the people who
mm,
they went back and forth to Wales all the time. We know
hmm
that for sure.
or Dalriada with Scotland.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Kingdom of
yeah,
Dalriada for sure.
hmm
When the this whole concept, I mean, we're going to talk about later, like what the term of you know how we always try to debunk what the idea of being Celtic
hmm
is,
hmm hmm
and it's
Oh,
the
you sorry, you say that, but you earlier, I didn't pick you up on this, but I shall now. You said a Celtic Briton, no, Celtic Roman, sorry, Romanized Celt,
Romano-Celt, yeah, Romano-Celt.
Romanized Celt, but all you have to say is Romano British, but they
That's
never
true.
called themselves Celts.
That's very true. Yes, they did
Yeah,
not. No,
yes, and I know
the
you know this. This is for the audience.
that that was copy pasted from one of the sources that they said
Yeah,
Romanized Celt is what they called him. Yeah, but yeah, they never called themselves that.
no,
Um, they never called themselves Romans either.
no,
They were just whatever was there on the day.
yeah.
Um,
We
so
are Steve.
no, I'm not.
I'm not Steve. Yeah.
Yes, you are.
I'm
Uh,
Stephen with a PH.
oh, you're Stefan then.
Yeah, Stefan. Yeah.
So another controversial question, Mark.
hmm
This is one that a lot of people fight over every year, and
Okay.
I hear it all the time.
hmm
So we're just going to put it to rest.
hmm
Did St. Patrick kick all the snakes out of Ireland?
I'm going to say yeah.
No! First of all, snakes never made it over the land bridge. They
Ah, okay.
there are no snakes in Ireland, not at
Right.
all. And
Okay.
if there are any now, they're very recent, but no, there were never snakes
No.
in Ireland. And of
Okay.
course, this is there are lots of people who claim that the story is all a metaphor for pagans, but guess what, kids? There were pagans before he was there, and there are pagans afterward. So it's
hmm
quite
hmm
impossible that he got rid of pagans, because we know Druids were around long after he was gone as well. Professor Ronald Hutton says in his book Blood and Mistletoe, The History of Druids in Britain, the importance of Druids encountering Patrick's missionary work was inflated only in later centuries under the influence of biblical parallels, and that Patrick's visit to Tara was given pivotal importance that it never possessed. And he, as I said before, he in Patrick's own words, he never converted kings and was never at Tara.
No.
Professor
Mm.
Lisa Patel claims that they might not have been snakes, but perhaps serpents or dragons, but as was the parlance of the time. And
Mm.
again, obviously, all these stories were made up long after Patrick died.
hmm Well, it's a heck of a way though to big up your
Hmm.
boy, isn't it? In that
Hmm.
sense,
Hmm.
to say that he banished things that have never been here.
Hmm.
So like you could claim that you've banished all aliens from your city, for
I
example.
did.
That would yeah,
I did.
exactly. Yeah, you went round with a stick. You're like, no, shoe.
They're all
And
in England at Stonehenge.
yeah, yeah. Yes, yes, indeed. Yeah. And
They're
they're all pro tunnel as well. Yeah.
or that's what they want you to think because they're among us. They're among.
God, I'd do anything for your door to open now and just like a grey to come through.
Go, oh, you're recording. Sorry. They just
Yeah,
disappear.
exactly. And then someone else comes in and you're like the kid on the BBC interview, just like no, and like, yeah.
Oh, that I wish I could orchestrate that. Alas,
I know, it'd be brilliant. Yeah, you could sort of pixelate it.
you need to
No.
copy paste yourself and just have in the background, or just have it yourself come in and then leave again in the background. Just have yourself. You know what I'll
Yeah.
do? I'll like edit it this way you're floating in the background.
Yep. So I gave you the point for that because I you know I deliberately
You
pulled
stepped in it.
a rubbish one.
Here's another one you can step right
Yeah.
into, Mark.
Uh-huh.
What color is St. Patrick associated with?
Um, I'm not. This is very quick QI because if I say it, you'll be like, no. Purple.
You're so close.
Oh.
The answer is royal blue, and that's why I'm wearing it. So,
Ah, they okay, cool. So
so
half each, you think?
as you will, as you will. I
Yeah,
think that's
okay.
fair. So, it is blue, not green. He's depicted in many medieval illuminations as wearing St. Patrick's blue.
Right.
Blue is also the color of the not the Irish flag now, but it is one of the symbols of Ireland. It's the
Mm-hmm.
national color of Ireland, not green. In 1541, when King Henry was declared the first English king of Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
he used the Irish harp on a blue flag for his Irish coat of arms. The
Right.
blue shade also appears on the 18th century Order of St. Patrick, and you can see lots of people in original depictions of St. Patrick's Day wearing blue.
Okay.
Much later, green became the color associated with the Irish Rebellion. During the Irish Rebellion of 1798, the shamrock as well became a symbol of nationalism, and wearing green on lapels became a regular practice,
Right.
probably an act of Catholic resistance to
Mm.
an English Protestant rule.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
green
this is
became color.
yeah, and this is where again, I do have, in addition to the family that I've married into, I do also have Irish family, and so I'm aware of a lot of the ways in which you do and don't talk about certain stuff, or you try not to and certain stuff. Um, but one of the things that I find aspirational, and I'm not taking a political or religious stance here, but I find it interesting and aspirational, is that the Republic's flag has orange, white, green. So
Mhm.
it's Catholicism, the Orange Order, and Protestantism, but more to the point, peace in the middle. This idea of somehow being able to bring it together and create a nation out of old troubles. Um, I find that yeah. So in that sense, the colours are deeply important. But blue, so I went purple because I was thinking, bishopy ish,
Oh, and that is very
Yeah.
smart. But we
Mm,
said, we don't know if he was ever
no.
made a bishop. We don't know.
Sorry, presumably he would have to have had a bishopric,
That's right.
an actual seat.
Hmm.
Um, and what is there any place that he's particularly linked with in Ireland?
We're gonna get to that.
Okay,
There are
sorry.
two
Okay,
places in
okay,
specific, and we will get to that.
okay, cool.
But as for his bishopric, we don't think
Mhm.
he ever received one,
No,
or at least
no.
in his own
Okay.
words, he never says anything about it. And
Mm,
when he was writing back to Rome, when he was writing back to British bishops, um, he did never address himself as such, and it seems that we don't know what they responded to him. So
no,
we have
no.
no way of knowing. But that is a good guess, purple because of the
Mm,
bishopric. Um, Next question:
yeah.
did St. Patrick ever duel with Druids?
uh, I'm gonna say I like the idea of it happening, but I'm going to be really mealy mouthed here and say we don't know.
And so it's very possible that the answer is no,
Oh,
no, yeah.
okay, okay.
Amelia.
I'll give you the point. I really, I did not commit. You
Commit
get
to
a
the bit,
point.
Mark. Commit to the bit.
Exactly. Commit.
No, we no, it's very possible he didn't. There's a very famous story that I laugh at because that he apparently he dueled with a bishop and he by way of godly magic he lifted him
Mm.
up at the air and like bashed him against a rock and no
Wow.
all that stuff
Sounds like
never.
sounds like Lord of the Rings,
Oh, it is very
You have
fanciful. It's
chosen the way of pain. No, you have elected, isn't it? You have elected the way of pain. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
and then he does a disco dance on the floor. Yeah, exactly.
the other query there as well is, and on a more serious note, is this, do you think, referring to particularly Old Testament sort of battles between prophets and
Yeah,
representatives of Baal and whatever, this kind of
it's
thing?
very
Yeah.
likely because
Yeah.
a lot of the things of his later texts were had a lot of biblical references
Yeah.
added on to it. We have classic sources of Druids and medieval Irish stories, but we know, as I said, we know nothing about the Druids. We know about half a ceremony from Pliny, and
Hmm.
that's about it. Everything else is mythological stories, and the mythological stories, they are good guys, and they shapeshift. There are archmage pagans that do magic.
Hmm.
There's no mention of their gods or evil. They are advisors of kings, but everything else is just we have no idea. Everything else, there's all the magic stuff obviously is myth.
Hmm.
Professor Ronald Hutton notes that many of the details surrounding St. Patrick's life with regard to Druids were changed and even fabricated hundreds of years later, as quoted by Pitzel Walters. The importance of Druids in countering Patrick's missionary work was inflated centuries after under the influence of biblical parallels, and that St. Patrick's visit, especially to Tara, was given pivotal importance, and that's about it.
Hmm.
If it ever occurred at all, he might
Hmm.
not have come into contact with any really to suit political preoccupations. And the only appearances of Druids in documents attributed to Patrick himself occur in some that are generally thought to have been composed in 7th century, meaning long after he died. So
Okay. Hmm.
Patrick himself never writes about doing battles with Druids.
Hmm.
It's all Michigas. It's
Yeah.
never happened.
I can, although I can, as far as shape-shifting goes, though, I can recommend, there's a wonderful comedy um, uh, bit by Tommy Tiernan.
Hmm.
He reflects on how the Irish have lost their ability to just shape-shift. And he both, when we're watching this, Mr. Soup and I, and often other people, are so impressed by, it almost looks like he's hoping that it will happen on stage in that moment.
Hmm.
He's willing it to occur, and it just never quite occurs. So, but yeah, I love the idea of being able to shapeshift.
There is a lot of,
Mm,
especially, you know, in my good friends, the Werewolves of Ossory, shapeshifting in general in a lot of the early Irish medieval stories happens quite frequently. And
mm,
in a lot of other places, shapeshifting is usually attributed to bad guys, but in Ireland, shapeshifting is just a thing that people do.
yeah,
Really, I
yeah,
mean, it doesn't matter if it's five or other gods or regular folk or kings, or it
mm,
doesn't matter. It seems like shape-shifting into swans and to into wolves is just a thing. And we have obviously the Irish puka, which is the
yeah,
great shapeshifter, but it it it's never seen as a at least in early Irish medieval stories, it's never seen as an evil. It's never meant to demonize pagans. At
no,
that all
or
that stuff,
unnatural. Yeah,
right, exactly, or
mm,
unnatural.
mm.
It only comes later. So maybe he's right. Maybe
Hmm.
maybe they did lose the ability along the way. And maybe it's someone else's fault that they can't do it
Yeah.
anymore.
And then when
Um,
someone asks you to suck their nipple to cross the Irish Sea, you just become a dolphin,
here you go.
and you're
No,
good.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
And you're like blowhole, and then just off you go, and you're away. Yeah. Um. No, I can't quite remember. What was the last question you asked? Sorry.
Did he battle druids? And so
Uh.
you said no.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
yes. No. Yeah, but I gave
So
you the point
give
there.
yourself a
Okay.
point.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So here's an easy one for you, Mark.
Uh-huh.
Did St. Patrick use the shamrock to explain the Trinity?
Sorry, the screen hasn't frozen there. Um. I'm gonna say no.
Correct. He did not. No.
Woohoo!
That story was made up much later, possibly to help convert the masses.
Hmm.
Professor Lisa Patel, a specialist in on his life and early medieval Ireland, assures people that Patrick never used the shamrock himself,
Yeah,
and it might have been completely fabricated by the Church of Armagh or Patrick's greater network in general. Another myth
yeah,
is that people chewed shamrocks to freshen their breath after drinking in the early modern period, but these accounts are completely erroneous. There's
yeah.
nothing to do with God or shamrocks or any of that kind of thing.
No,
None of Patrick's stories in his own writing ever talk about doing that.
the Shamrock. Yeah,
He's actually tells people how he converted people, and nothing has to do with shamrocks.
no, no.
Yeah.
He just locked people in a box for a while, and
Yeah.
no, no, obviously not.
Are
Although,
are you sorry?
yeah,
No.
exactly. Yeah, repent. I've got splinters. No, it. That said, though, so you've got Patrick and the Shamrock. What about Bridget then? Is that a thing? Saint
Uh,
Bridget and
and
the
her blanket.
reeds. No,
So
she
same.
wove reeds, didn't she?
Oh, you're talking about the St. Bridget's Cross. So here
Yes.
is, well, very briefly about Breach. So she is possibly two different people who got
Right. Okay.
conflated into one. Um,
Hmm.
the goddess, who is possibly linked to the god Brigantia. Again, we're not sure, but they're very similar. They were associated with very similar things.
Hmm.
And then the person who was written about, obviously St. Bridget of Kildare,
Hmm.
who was written about much later. But uh, in early times, it seems they were never associated with each other. And then sometime after 13th century, suddenly there was a revival of her, and they started being associated with each other. We don't know
Hmm.
how far back that double association goes.
Hmm.
But again, a lot of the stories so unlike Patrick, we don't have any of Bridget's writing in her own hand. We
No.
only know what was written about her from people who came a couple of years after she died. And
Hmm.
again, we don't know how embellished they are, because there are stories of her befriending some of the werewolves of Ossory. There's the great story of the blanket, where she puts there's a whole blanket over a huge part of Ireland.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's again, it's all fantasy. But and then obviously we have St. Bridget's crosses. We have the
Hmm.
prong version, the four prong version. There's the what's it called, the Druid's Eye version. There are many different things. But interestingly enough, she doesn't have any. There's a whole story of her cow and the milk, but unlike St. Patrick, she doesn't have stories of battling druids and doing and trying to rid of pagans and all that stuff. Instead, she has much more interesting, nurturing stories, and
Okay.
I cannot tell you why that is.
Hmm.
So I think it has to do with her hagiographers. We have several hagiographers of her, but nothing in her own handwriting. So I cannot tell you if she is the first person to make her own crosses, because we just have no way of knowing.
No,
You know,
no, no. It does make me think of the idea of her selling crosses to druids, making crosses on the side of the road. Hi. Um, and just very briefly, while we're on a slight tangent there, I was sent a couple of years ago now by a good friend a copy of The Torn, a graphic
Oh,
novel,
Tanbahonia, yeah, nice,
in
beautiful copy, beautiful.
yeah, yeah, in Irish. It's beautiful. But then also this I can recommend as well. While we're again St. Patrick's Day.
Cuchulainn. Oh
Yeah.
wait, why does Cuchulainn look like Conan?
I don't know. It's proper Conan the Barbarian type stuff.
I love it.
But this is in English. So if people aren't necessarily up on their Irish, you can get hold of that as well. But all this talk of there's something wonderful, isn't there, about these massive stories about things
Of
like the
course.
blanket and very similar to from in terms of where I'm from in Wales. It's just, the storied landscapes are so rich, and that's definitely worth celebrating. Yeah.
Where is St. Patrick buried?
Oh, oh, I think I've known this at some point. I'm going to have to just give you the point and say I don't know though.
I was
I
actually
don't
waiting
know.
for you to say Downpatrick, because that's the very famous. They claim
Hmm.
to have the burial of St. Patrick. But then Armagh for a long time, which is where Patrick's cult center was for a very long time, they claimed that
Yeah.
they had his body. Sources say some sources say there was a complete fight over his body.
Hmm.
Patrick himself says he wanted to be buried under a cubit of earth, so no one would be able to get him. One other source says that Patrick set up a doppelganger. This is a good story. He set up a doppelganger with a cart, so his body would go one way, and this way his doppelganger would go the other way. So nobody would know which way his body was going.
Okay. Okay.
Ultimately, we have no idea where his body was or who got it. The, kind of like King Arthur, and his grave. It's the same thing at
Mm.
Downpatrick. His body is not at Armagh, even though that, like I said, that's where his cult center was. Some claim they found his body, dug it
Hmm.
up with Colmcille and with Breach, and buried them somewhere else. And others claim that his body was reburied at Downpatrick, which is where the cubit of earth is now.
Uh-huh.
Downpatrick claims to have his body, but Downpatrick itself was only established in 1183. Patrick died
Yeah.
long before, hundreds of years before that.
Mm.
So
Mm.
yeah, they don't have his body.
No, and not only are we talking about transitions in terms of how uh, high-ranking Christians within the church were treated,
Hmm.
going from essentially Roman practices through to something new, but also as well you've got transitions in terms of, again, the extent to which memorializing particular people becomes politically or religiously uncomfortable for some.
Hmm.
So there'll be reasons why two different places are claiming. I think the reason why I said I've heard something but I don't know is because I do believe that it was Mrs. Soup's mum, um, a lovely lady who I'm convinced is basically half fairy. If she could, she would live in the woods and she would just uh, trick people into falling into pits. Um, but but she was
That's a
once
good
telling us
racket,
this.
though.
Yeah, it would be a good record. Yeah, yeah. And then she could then offer bandages. But no, she was pointing to the I think the Armagh community as being possibly where Patrick was, and I was like, really? And I don't think she was saying she thought it was the case, but she highlighted that this was one of their claims. Yeah.
It's a
Um,
long-standing question, and it's a
yeah.
very long-standing war. We have no idea. There was
No.
also a lot of I don't want to say tension, but a lot of friendly rivalry
Uh-huh.
between Kildare and Armagh, because Kildare always claimed to have Breach's body. And so Armagh wanted to have Patrick's body, and then obviously over the centuries, Downpatrick claimed that they had the body. And then there was the
Hmm.
story, like I said, of them saying that the body was dug up and moved. Problem is that, early medieval period, bones were being lifted and moved all the time. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
don't know. We have
Yeah.
no idea. And even if
Oh, well,
we open.
well, there you go. Actually, that's an economic incentive as well, isn't it? I
Hmm.
suppose, people
Hmm.
wanting, yeah, human remains.
Pilgrimages to go see people's fingers.
Mm, mm,
Absolutely, yeah. So we
yeah.
have no clue. There's the very famous what's it called? Was it a basilica? Oh dang, I don't remember the exact name. In France, the very metal looking, I don't know if you've ever seen, I'm sure you've seen it, but it's the Saint Mary, that
Oh,
there's
yes. Yeah.
a church in
Hmm.
France that claims to have
Yeah.
Mary's skull. It is the
Hmm.
most metal thing you've ever seen. It's a golden shroud, and
Hmm.
then it's a glass case and a black skull.
Yeah.
And very obviously it's not Mary, but
No,
but
but it sounds awesome.
it
Yeah.
looks the business, though. It looks
Yeah. Yeah.
fantastic. So that's why I'm saying, if people dug up and reburied things and claimed that they had bones and didn't, it was a day out. The
Yeah.
people would go and see, ooh, the skeleton, yay, who was very
Mm.
possible. Same thing with, the Shroud of Turin. We know that the one that's hanging up in the Vatican, we know it's very
And
old, very, very, rather, I should say, new to us. It's not.
no, we even better than that. We have an investigation from the local, I think, bishop actually,
Yes.
inquiring with a local craftsperson as to how they made it. It
Hmm.
wasn't did you make it, it was how did you make it. So Yeah, and yet the church. It's interesting because actually the Catholic Church, they'll say it is an icon of people's faith. The Turin Shroud, that is. They don't go so far as to you know as to actually say yes, this is a thing,
Hmm.
but they acknowledge that it's become an icon. Which I guess anything can become an icon. One more thing though, just on to speaking about metal. I don't know if I've mentioned this on a previous stream, but it sounds like the sort of thing that I would bring up with you. This sort of weird crossing of biblical history and metal. Uh, I love somewhere in the New Testament the description of the persona of Christ as being firstborn amongst the dead. It's just like it's so cool. Like if you could have that on a badge, like,
Jesus,
uh,
the original Dark Souls.
back of a leather jacket. Exactly, yeah. Oh, yes, Dark Souls.
No,
Yeah.
no, we need to. So is that it? Is Jesus the first Dark Souls boss? Is that so? Is
Could
if
be. Uh-huh.
what is St. Patrick's greatest sin?
Oh, not being actually Irish. Oh,
So so rough. Snap.
There's,
Actually, we actually don't know. Whatever it
okay.
was, it really bothered him because he wrote his the Confessio. He was as we said before, he was possibly never made a bishop, which might have bothered him. In his confession, he does say that Rome did not approve of his mission to Ireland.
Right.
Uh, and whatever it was, whatever his great sin was,
Hmm.
that he was not forgiven for. Um, we have no idea. He claims that his friend was the one who squealed to the bishop and told
Mm-hmm.
the council of his sin.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it was, though. Patrick wrote in his confession, in consequence of this, some theorize that he might have done something pagan in his youth that
Mm-hmm.
he was not forgiven for. Some think that maybe he took a bribe. Others think it might have been something sexual, but I mean, priests in them days got married and had kids.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was quite common for people to have monastic families. We have
Mm,
long records of this.
mm.
Years
Well,
into
I mean,
his
you were saying his father was a priest.
That's correct, and his
Yeah,
grandfather as well,
yeah.
So, it was quite so it couldn't be that he wanted to get married because we knew people did in those days.
Mm,
Years into his mission, he wrote in his own hand, "They brought up against me after 30 years something I had already confessed, some things I had done one day, rather in 1 hour when I was young." That's all we know.
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much though. We all have things we've done when we were young that we regret.
I'm just gonna
You know.
say it's probably something very innocuous that he did when he was 16, because he does still claim that he wasn't that he said that he wasn't fully Christian, and we don't know what that means in his own words. We have no idea.
No.
So it's probably something very innocuous, like smoke pot
Mm.
or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Indeed, yes. I did.
It's okay, Patrick. That's legal now, so don't worry about it.
I only licked the mistletoe. I did not inhale. Yeah.
Oh, you know what?
Um.
That'd be great that if he didn't do it, was it he didn't do it on the full moon, the sixth week after the full moon, and he didn't cut it with a golden sickle.
Yeah.
He'd have
Yeah.
to confess his sins to Pliny at that point.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. That's interesting because it's not quite the same thing, but there are other mysteries, aren't there? So lots of other people write. Of course, there are other mysteries, for goodness sake. Why else would we be here? But no, no, but but no, no, but in particular, again, the way that religious people seem to refer to things that bother them. You have, is it Paul talking about the thorn in his side?
Hmm.
And people don't know what that means. It could be a physical ailment. It could be some sort of regret that he's carrying with him.
Hmm.
Is this do you think this is possibly a broader? It's hard to say, isn't it? Is it a broader Christian shame thing,
That's an
or
interesting
is
point because
well,
Patrick himself,
sorry, or is it possibly um a a character choice of people at the time thing? So I mean, because we're talking about a transition from Roman to what we think of as broadly Christian culture.
I have to
Uh,
say, I mean, as I did not grow up Catholic myself, but there is the
mm,
concept of Catholic guilt and
yeah, yeah.
and certainly Irish guilt, right?
Mm,
And so it is possible that this is all part of it. Patrick was an apocalyptic person. He was
mm,
one of the apocalyptic saints. He did believe in the end of the world, and Christianity in general is a linear religion, right? There is a beginning, middle,
mm,
and end, and
mm,
so it is possible that he just it was something very innocuous that he felt bad about, but in terms of the end, that he wanted to confess it before the end.
yeah.
And if we but beyond that, there's no way of knowing. But I do think
Mm,
that guilt is built into not necessarily Catholicism, because that
mm.
concept of Catholicism didn't really exist.
Wasn't quite there yet.
It
Yeah.
wasn't there in his day.
Mm, no.
But there is that whole, like, again, the idea of confession, and just in general for people who are religious,
Mm.
they do feel some sort of penance.
Well,
But again,
and
that's not necessarily all religions.
yeah, no, I'm just very intrigued by it because again, because of broader history interests, you hit reading is so sexy. Nice.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Um,
realize it was also on this side of the
yeah.
mug because it's on that. I purposely kept it on this side part. Yeah.
Um, you also hear about, there's lots of theologians have wrapped themselves up in knots about the
Hmm.
nature of and how communicable, for example, sin and misdeeds are, haven't they? Um, and the idea that, I mean, again, as you say, it's probably something innocuous in so much as I
Hmm.
think it was something, if it was something massive, um, you could probably claim, because you're an Irish saint, for goodness sake, you could probably claim that you've been forgiven, you know. But or maybe I don't know. It's just such an interesting why and what was it? Yeah,
I'll be honest,
interesting.
I find the historical Patrick um a lot more interesting than I do. I mean, I
Mm,
love the myths, right? Because I love I'm a mythologist. I collect myths.
mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
love this stuff. But I think because we have writings in his own hand, which is so rare
Yeah.
for saints,
Mm,
um, I think this is actually much more interesting. And I don't because I
mm,
don't, it's a mystery that has never been solved. And
mm,
I don't think because we don't have a reply
no,
from the British. We don't have a reply that they wrote to him. So we have
no.
no idea if he was forgiven or if they accepted his mission to Ireland. We have no clue. And I
Mm,
think that's far more interesting
mm,
than that, you know, oh, St. Patrick kicked all the snakes out of our, because we could make up all the myths from here to tomorrow that we want to.
mm,
Whereas
mm,
we actually have his own terrors and his own fears.
mm.
I think he would be quite shocked up, you know, to see things that were made up after him.
Mm.
But because he did believe in the end of the world, I think I think he wonders.
Like, what? It's still going?
Yeah,
What? Oh, for goodness sake!
it's like just stop
Can't
all
believe
this.
this. Like, yeah.
So speaking of still going, Mark,
uh,
how was St. Patrick's Day traditionally celebrated in Ireland?
with a feast,
No, actually, pretty much not.
with a celebration.
Which pretty with pretty much nothing, because if you think about
Oh,
it,
okay, okay.
drinking was forbidden on St. Patrick's Day in Ireland,
Hmm, hmm.
for a very long time. It ended up it's in the middle of Lent,
Right.
right?
So it didn't lend itself to drinking from the highs of Pict to the lows of Lent.
There's a
It's a
dad
roller
joke
coaster.
checklist that somebody sent me. I'm sending that to you later because I know you're gonna tick them all off. But no, the no drinking, no meat, right? Church of Ireland decreed
Mm,
in 17th century that it was forbidden to sell or consume alcohol on March the 17th. The idea was to obviously respect the sacred nature of the quote unquote celebration by
yeah,
associating it with fasting and abstinence. Oh my God, so fun. It was only in the 1970s that the ban on drinking was lifted. And also all the drunkenness came from abroad.
yeah,
St. Patrick's Day was a very dry day.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I mean, even to this day, actually. St. Patrick's Day is much more, it's much more overtly celebrated in English pubs than it is in, for example, Wales, Scotland, in Ireland. You know, when I've been there on these days, yeah, people acknowledge that it's St. Patrick's Day, but it's the English who get trashed. And that's interesting, isn't it? Whereas on St. George's Day, they don't do anything. Hmm.
Yeah, very interesting then, isn't it? I
Hmm.
mean, St. David's Day, nobody goes out and gets sloshed, right? Everybody just, they have
No.
their
Yeah.
leeks and cheese, and then they
Yeah.
they have a
Nice
grand
rare
old
bit.
dance and go
Yeah.
home. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Wear a funny hat.
I
Yeah.
love those hats. I love the lace. I
I
love the
know.
hats.
Yeah.
Do you have a traditional Welsh hat, Mark?
No, I need to get one. I do. Yeah. I wish I had one up there. I don't. Yeah.
No, you
I know.
need a little one.
Yeah.
With the lace coming out of it.
Yeah.
So to your point, when was the first St. Patrick's Day celebrated?
Uh, Remind me, when did he die?
We think
Uh-huh.
sometime around 460 or 480. We are not sure. Somewhere around that time.
I'm going to say 9th century.
By the end of the 7th century, St. Patrick had become a legendary
Oh.
figure, but he was never formally canonized at the time.
Woo! Okay.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
wasn't until the 1630s
Oh.
that March
Okay.
17th was labeled as the traditional day of St. Patrick's death, and it was added into the Catholic breviary. As well,
Right.
according to Professor Adrian Mulligan, he claims that the 1600s, St. Patrick was when he gained popularity in the Cromwellian period and started becoming a symbol of Irish Catholic resistance against
Right.
British Protestantism and colonialism. The
Yeah.
Irish penal laws of 1695 intensified the injustice brought on by Protestant English, wherein they stripped the Catholic Church of religious freedoms in nearly all holdings, including their land.
Mm.
The laws were repealed in the late 18th century, so the laws might have driven St. Patrick's popularity, giving rise to celebrations in America rather than
Okay.
Ireland.
Okay. And how just can we brief, if we again, if we're going to get cancelled for something, let's try and get cancelled for this. Um, how how do you feel about the so-called plastic Irish problem?
Oh man, we're gonna get canceled. I know, I'll
Okay.
say this. I know Irish
Yeah, go
people
on.
are very angry about it. And I know that they've
Yeah.
been upset about it for the plastic patty thing.
Mm,
They've been very upset about it for a long time. And
yeah.
any time that they do say something, the Irish people in Ireland, about this,
Mm,
that they say, you know, we don't like this. It's a these are very racist depictions.
yeah.
You know, the whole leprechaun with the green outfit, the orange beard,
Yeah.
the Irish accent, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Top of
so
the morning, yeah, that kind of
yes,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. The whole
Mm,
Hollywood, the Darby O'Gill
mm, yeah.
plastic patty aspect of it, yeah.
Mm,
They're always very angry about it. It is fading with new generations, but it is a form of racism
mm,
that persisted for a very long time. And it was, you know, very annoying because you have a lot of, I would say, American people who go, "Oh, I'm Irish," and then when they go back
mm,
to Ireland to visit for the first time, and they go, "Oh, you know, oh, let's have some corned beef and cabbage." You just go,
yeah.
we don't do that here."
No.
And
No.
when I was in Ireland, there were lots of Irish people who were wished that would go away. And it is
Yeah.
going away because Ireland itself is now, you know, in the last 25 years since Celtic Tiger years, Ireland itself is now a land of immigrants, which is
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. And many
Mm-hmm.
of them are thrilled about it because for so long, Ireland was oppressed and they had to leave and they
Yeah. It's a
had to
place that
go.
people left. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. I think
Mm,
the Irish diaspora is estimated at about 70 million worldwide.
yeah.
And
Mm,
still to this day, only 6 million people around live in Ireland, and
mm,
they really hate it. And it is,
mm,
like I say, it is a form of racism. And people forget that until very recently, um, people thought of the Irish as another race, right?
yes.
There's a whole history. Even
Yeah.
where I grew up, they still keep up the signs that say no Irish need apply. That's very famous.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say other horribly racist things, which I will not repeat
Mm-hmm.
here because if we're gonna get canceled, I'm not doing it for saying bad things.
No.
Um, but it is, I will say this, that it is going away. I mean, obviously, you know, we still put on the green, which again was a color that Americans associated with the rebellion,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? We still put
And
on our
also,
green,
yeah, the buckle hats and this
yeah,
kind
the
of thing.
buckle
Yeah,
hats, the,
yeah,
you know, the leprechauns,
yeah.
etc. And when when I was in Ireland, the very first person who greeted me in Dublin was a giant leprechaun with a pot of gold. No word of a lie. He was sitting on Grafton Street, and he's wearing his leprechaun outfit, and
Uh-huh.
he's got a giant pot of gold sitting next to him, and I just
Yeah,
laughed. And
yeah.
and he said, "Oh, where are you from, darling?" And I said, "Oh, you know, Canada." He goes, "Oh, you're gonna go around to drink?" And I went, "No, I'm not here to do that. I'm here, you know, to see Trinity and inhale the Book of Kells and sit in the welter in the long library and all that." And he goes,
Inhale the
"Ah,"
book of
and of course,
bells.
the most Irish thing ever. He goes, "Ah, go on."
Yeah,
And
sure. Yeah, surely you want to. Yeah.
but they
Well,
so they
yeah,
do capitalize on that for the tourist aspect,
yeah,
but the idea that, you know, Irish people drink a lot, that they're associated with leprechauns, I've heard people, you know, the very racist accents and things like that. It is going away. That's what I'll
yeah.
say, is it's going away, but it is not liked in Ireland, no.
No, no, no. And then, so for my part, the reason why I was asking that is that I was curious in terms of your observations from your side of the pond, because like I think a lot of it is about intent, and because as you say, it is possible to celebrate some of the weird iconography
Yeah,
linked with any nation. I mean, you know, so
sure,
for Welsh rugby matches, people put on great big daffodil hoods. I love it.
for sure.
Um, uh, but it's about whether or not it's, yeah, it's connected to first of all, immutable characteristics, i.e.
Hmm.
something you can't control about yourself, and secondly, the extent to which it's been used to characterize other people in the past. I think
Hmm.
there's something there. And so, for example, when we were in Ballymena, and there was the shop that no locals go into, obviously because you don't have to, but tourists were going into, and there was like everything. It was Simon, my brother-in-law, called it the fiddle-dee-dee shop, and
We actually,
and
so my friend Fiddly, I love you, Fiddly, God bless you. But
uh,
there's they call Irish music the diddly eye, right? The diddly eye.
yeah, yeah.
The fiddle.
Um, so they went into the fiddly-dee shop. It wasn't too far uh from the big shopping center there. And I was like, oh my, well, why is that in the window? Like, again, it was everything. The shamrocks, it was the
Hmm.
big red beard you could buy, this kind of thing. And again, he said, but the difference here is probably that we are selling it, and that we
Ah,
have
I
ownership
see.
over it, that kind of thing.
I see.
Whereas when someone, I think, so that obviously once you start that conversation, it expands. And so, later on we were talking about how, oh yeah, so first of all, no one ever claims that they're Welsh. You never get an American going, "Hi, I'm like 1/18th Welsh." That doesn't happen. Never happens.
No.
But what I'm finding interesting is, as you say, it's in that sense more and more awareness is growing. I think uh, on the East Coast, a place like Chicago, etc., about what it means to say this stuff. But also, I think actually within, again, this was primarily a Northern Irish perspective, although we did, again, it's a complicated family. There's people in the south as well, but in this instance, we were talking with a bunch of people who grew born and raised in Antrim, and they were all saying how what they like to do when at the Giant's Causeway, for example, that happens, is kind of meet people where they're at,
Hmm.
go, yeah, sure, grand, and then just sort of slowly walk them into the fact, we have mobile phones, we have the internet, it's not cool to cosplay as a peasant, that kind of thing. And that's it. That, I think that's got to be it. It's just to remind people, sure, that stuff exists, but also we're modern people, and you're not Irish. You're American with an Irish ancestor, and it's
Yes.
wonderful that you want to celebrate that. That's
Yes.
fantastic, but don't cosplay as essentially it's like being a harlequin or something. It's like putting on a character that's been used in the past to subjugate people.
Yeah, absolutely. You
Yeah,
want to engage with
yeah,
Irish culture, magic, enjoy the
yeah,
music, learn the language, learn
yeah,
Irish for sure.
mm.
Learn the mythology.
Mm,
Enjoy that aspect of it. But a lot of we'll talk about and that in a second, about the
mm,
difference between Irish American and Irish.
mm.
And in so doing, Mark,
Hmm.
when was the first St. Patrick's Day parade?
Stateside.
It has to be.
Yeah. Okay.
It has to be. There was no St. Patrick's Day parade in Ireland. Get out of here.
I'm gonna say 1950s.
This is debate. This is a hot topic that is
Okay.
debated. So
Yep.
who knows? We'll probably get canceled for this too. Um, It is debated. The University of South Florida found
Uh-huh.
evidence to suggest that March 1601 residents of St. Augustine's in Spanish Florida gathered together and processed through the city streets in honor of St. Patrick, who seemed to have served as the official protector of the city's maize fields. The first
Interesting.
parade has long been believed to be a small celebration by Irish people in Boston, Massachusetts, 1737. But the New York Parade
Hmm.
in 1762 claims to be the first official parade.
Right. Interesting. Interesting.
Uh,
1762.
there were,
Okay.
and as we said, there were never any parades in Ireland at the time. New York, 1762 is when Irish soldiers in the British Army marched to St. Patrick's Day celebration with their band, playing their instruments and having their regimental colors flying, and that's where
Yeah.
they wore the green.
Right.
Initially, they were not an expression of Irish nationalism, but instead dominated by Protestants loyal to Britain. It was only after American independence, 1776, the suppression of the 1798 Irish Rebellion in Ireland, and the flood of Irish Catholic immigrants into America mid-19th century, that the ethos of this parade changed. In any case, because of anti-Irish racism, especially in the States,
Yeah.
um, Irish people were being given command of a street for a day, and being allowed to be proud of themselves was a big thing at the time.
Mm.
And it did begin as a militaristic display, but once this got exported back to Ireland, it became much more universal and celebratory. And so there is a big question. I don't know if you know as well that in New York City, where they have one of the biggest ones I don't know if Boston or New York City is considered to be the biggest one nowadays. I
Mm.
don't know.
Mm.
But they're in the
Right.
80s and
Sorry,
90s.
I should say I always get confused. I think I meant Boston when I said Chicago earlier.
Oh, but
Apologies.
Chicago
Yeah, yeah.
does have a big
Yeah,
one, absolutely,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Because Chicago is where they dye the River
The river.
Green.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay. So I wasn't wrong. Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yes, that's where they
Okay,
dye the River
yeah,
Green, yeah.
yeah.
And but because this began as a militaristic display,
Mm-hmm.
then obviously it became a very symbol of Irishness, and then a symbol of Irish Americanness. And then obviously when LGBTQ people who were leaving Ireland, where they were not free to express themselves, wanted to march in the parade, suddenly they went, nope, nope, this is a Catholic celebration, and you can't do
Ah,
it. And that's always been a very contentious thing. And
yeah.
again, it has now started to divorce that divide between Irish Americanness and Irishness, right? So,
Mm.
and
So could I just say before we move on, the
yeah, sure.
reason I didn't go earlier than 1960s is because of anti-Irish sentiment. You see, so
Mm,
but it's interesting. So what you've laid out there is an affinity for Patrick that
hmm
predates an awful lot of that nonsense, and then you have the gubbins with the no Irish, no blah 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 blah, happening in American cities and also, frankly, in other places. Um, so hence I said 1960. It's not because I don't think there's any history in the US.
No,
I
no, not at all. It's that,
was
and
thinking, would they have the time for it in the 40s?
but
Probably not.
they
You know,
were free to express themselves in the US, right? Because remember, in Ireland, there was no St. Patrick's Day parade, and Ireland was dry until the 1970s. So there was
yeah.
no drinking, no celebration. It was a religious holiday
Mm, mm,
in the home country. So of
mm,
course, people are going to celebrate abroad, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Another thing we're going to get canceled for. So was corned beef and cabbage an original St. Patrick's Day dish?
I'm going to say no.
No, no, it wasn't. First of
Good.
all, obviously, it was never eaten in Ireland, as we said, because St.
Exactly.
Patrick's Day falls out in the middle of Lent, so
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah.
meat. Beef as well is not an Irish thing, really.
No.
Again, until
No.
recently, beef was a British thing,
Yeah.
and beef was often too expensive to eat because it was subject to high taxes.
Yeah. I was thinking it
60,
might be mutton or fish, but you know,
probably
even
fish.
then,
Yeah,
yeah.
in the 16th president of the United States chose the meal of mock turtle soup followed by corned beef and cabbage, a dish
Mm,
traditionally associated with St. Patrick's Day feasting in America. In Ireland, bacon and cabbage is a thing. Rashers, obviously, is a thing,
mm,
but that's not a strictly St. Patrick's Day thing.
no.
Nope.
No. Oh, have you ever had an Ulster fry?
Oh, of course I have. Mark, don't talk to me that way. How dare you? Have you had it with farls, though?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. Yeah, it's fantastic.
The
Um,
friendship is saved.
yeah. Just thought I'd confirm, that's all.
Joe, actually,
Interesting.
the best one I had, well, I mean, obviously Bewley's is cracking, but big up to Bewley's, please sponsor me. I love you, and I'll ship your stuff any day of the week. But the best one I had was actually at the Dublin airport, because when
Right.
you go upstairs at the Dublin airport, there is no word of a lie, at least before COVID, because I haven't been there since. There is a breakfast counter, and there is a person at a skillet, and every skillet has a different thing. So one skillet has the rashers, one skillet has the mushrooms, another skillet has the tomatoes, etc., and another skillet has farls, and you can just have whatever you want. And so what I
Yeah.
did as I was leaving Dublin, I was so depressed as leaving. And I took the plate and I went to the rasher lady and I went, fill it up. And I went to the farl person and I went, fill it up. And they went, okay, if that's what you want. And so I made a deckard sandwich of just rashers and farls, rashers and farls, like
Uh-huh.
a cake of bacon and potato, just sitting there going.
And then you had this huge food coma, presumably on the plane.
So I will tell you very briefly the story of me and the Irish butter. So here in Canada, Irish butter is illegal. Because of the cultural imports, etc. The culture that's used in the butter so we do have our own quote unquote Irish butter. We do have Kerrygold, which is the greatest
Yeah.
butter in the universe, but it's not from Ireland. It is
No.
the brand that is licensed and it's from Ontario. Now they make the butter in the same way that they do in Ireland, is grass fed, etc. But it obviously doesn't taste the same. And so when
Hmm.
you go to Dublin Airport, there is a wonderful, gorgeous shop that you can buy any Irish imports in. You can buy Irish cheeses, you can buy butter, you can buy salmon, you can buy bread, brown bread, of course. You can buy anything you
Wheaten
like.
bread.
Oh,
Yep.
it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So you can go into, and while you're waiting there, you go into the Dublin Airport and you take back duty free. You can take back anything you want. So I'm
Right.
standing in line at this shop, and I have in my hand giant brick of Kerrygold butter. And anything that you can fit in your carry-on, you can take it in the plane. They will not stop you from doing that. So I get to the counter and he goes, okay, where are you going?
Uh-huh.
And I went, England. And that is true because I had to stop over there. And he went, let me see your ticket. No, come on. And he goes, put it back. And I've said, no, this is
No.
stupid. This is
Yeah.
ridiculous. I'm not
Yeah.
putting it back. This is racism. This you're angry against Canadians. I'm not doing. He's like, listen, darling, it's your government that won't let us do it. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. This is
I
stupid.
just want my butter.
So I went to go put it back, and
Uh-huh.
the thing is that it doesn't make sense because you're not allowed butter, but you're allowed the cheese. Again, doesn't
Yeah.
make sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I went to get the cashew blue cheese, which is gorgeous. Please get cashew blue cheese. And I got the brown bread. I shoved it in my bag and I'm standing on the line with my arms crossed and I'm angry. And no word of a lie, the man in front of me had a giant flash frozen salmon in his arms. And he dumps it on the counter. This thing must have been 30 pounds. He dumps it on the counter and they go, where are you going? He went, oh, Germany. And okay. And I went, excuse me, this man
Mhm.
can take a fish
Yeah.
on a plane that is probably going to thaw by the time he gets home. And I can't take butter
Mm.
back. And they went, it's his government. This is what they allow. And I went, this is bull. That's what this is. This is bull. And so, of course, and so I get on the plane I get on the
Uh-huh.
plane, I'm crying, I'm angry, etc. And I'm sitting there with my arms humped, and suddenly the plane stewardess comes over to me, and she puts on my tray a little scone, a little jam, a little cream, and a little pat of Kerrygold butter. And immediately the light bulb goes off. And I looked at her and I said, "Can I have some more butter?" And she goes, "Yeah, sure." And she takes out, a bunch of pats and she puts it on a thing. And I look in the tub and I go, "How much you got in there?" And she goes, "Oh, well, we have as much for, as
Yeah.
everybody on the plane." But I was the only person on the charter plane. And I
Nice.
opened my bag and I said, "Fill it up." And she literally dumped it into my bag. And I'm going, and as the plane's taking off, I'm looking down at Dublin Airport going, and I walked into the airport with
Oh,
must have been 500 pats of butter in my bag. It was
wow.
gorgeous. I had the last laugh, Mark.
Yeah,
I
yeah, you're
had the last laugh.
butter outlaw, yeah. But that's exactly the sort of thing that you should do. But also, yes, in this household, we would do that for Kerrygold butter.
Mm-hmm.
Also, obviously, Tato's crisps as well.
Mm-hmm.
Although there are two different Tato's,
Yes.
we are fans of the Northern Irish Tato's, but there is also a company in the south as well, in the Republic
But
of
what
Ireland.
flavor though? What flavor though,
Uh,
Mark?
just plain, just yeah, like a nice cheesy tato, simple
Cheese is
tato.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
We do get them
Um,
here. We do get, but they are the best actually. There is a company that does Guinness chips. There's Guinness
mhm,
obviously has chocolate as well, which is very nice.
yeah,
Um, so
and
that
and Guinness Twiglets. You ever tried that?
I didn't know this existed.
Yeah, it's nice. It's really good bar snack. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna have to give you some money, Mark, and you're gonna have to send me that because
No,
we
with some
can
butter.
we I'd pay good money for real Kerrygold butter. I'll tell you that for
Uh-huh.
nothing. I
Uh-huh.
absolutely would. But that is the right way to celebrate Irishness is support Irish products, especially ones that are so good like Kerrygold butter.
Yeah.
You can't get it any better than from the country itself, honestly.
No.
To
No.
take it from somebody who has to deal with Kerrygold from Ontario, no.
Hmm,
Mm-mm.
hmm.
Still good, not the same because it's not the same cows, not the same grass.
Not have you?
Um,
Well, have you ever seen the advert with the Happy Moo cow?
no.
I'll have to send you that link. Yeah.
Oh, please do.
So, oh, look at the Happy Moo cows. Yeah. Um,
They
sorry.
must be happy because they're making Kerrygold butter.
Okay, we're way off topic here. Any more questions for me?
Oh, there are a few. So,
Okay.
why are leprechauns associated with St. Patrick's Day?
Wishful thinking.
Oh, that's a very interesting thing. I mean, it's really just Americans and American propaganda, but that's a very interesting point that you made.
Wishful thinking.
It's the same thing with, like the luck of the Irish, etc.
Mm,
Obviously, in their mythology, leprechauns are not even green, and the whole pot of gold thing happened
mm.
it's a much later construction. Darby O'Gill and the Little People of 1959. If you've never seen that movie,
I have not.
really,
No.
Mrs. Super's never showed you?
No.
It's quite bad.
Okay.
There were Irish actors. Oh,
Oh, is that where the I've heard a meme where someone goes, "The little people," like oh no, it sounds like I've only ever heard that little bit, but it sounds
yeah,
like it's in the context of like, "You've got to believe me," that
yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so Darby O'Gill and the Little People did something to popularize the look and the feeling of the
Right.
leprechaun. And there's a story that wearing green makes you invisible to leprechauns again, but that has nothing to do with St. Patrick's Day or Ireland in
Oh,
general.
wearing green. When we got married, I was trying to find a green waistcoat, and
Ah,
no one does them. Yeah, they'll do almost any other color. Again, this seems to be an English thing. It's linked with bad luck.
so racist.
It's so weird, isn't it?
The
Yeah.
the earliest
So
known
we
reference
had one made.
to green leprechauns appears in a medieval tale, the Extra Fergus MacLeody, The Adventures of Fergus, son of Letty. The text contains an episode in which Fergus, King of Ulster, falls asleep on the beach and wakes up to find himself being dragged out to sea by three, again, Luchar, which is the old Irish name for them. He captures his abductors, who grant him three wishes in exchange for release. nothing to do with rainbows, gold, etc. Before the 20th century, it was generally held that leprechauns wore red, sometimes brown, depending on where they're from,
Hmm.
not green. And Mick, Annalie's account, there were differences between leprechauns, obviously, for different regions of what they wore. Modern image of the leprechaun sitting on the toadstool, having the red beard and the green hat, is an American invention, probably
Yeah.
borrowed from other strands of European folklore. The
Mm.
most likely explanation for the modern day leprechaun appearance is that, as we said, green became the color of Irish nationalism from
Hmm.
abroad, and dating back to the earliest depiction that we have of a leprechaun wearing green is 1642. The hat, uh,
Hmm.
the hat might be derived from the style of outdated fashion, which was still common in Ireland in the early 19th century. And this was a style of fashion that Irish immigrants wore to the United States, since some Elizabethan era clothes were still common in Ireland, like we said, until
Mm.
early 19th century. And it was depicted by this like stage Irish, right? They wore this to signify, I am an Irish character. Same
Yeah.
thing with the buckle shoes and other garments also have their origin in the Elizabethan period in Ireland, which I'm sure, knowing well anything about Welsh costume, it's pretty
Hmm.
much the same
Not a
idea,
million
right?
miles away. Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I used to have somewhere around here. Although it's probably now underneath something. I kept for novelty's sake a box of Lucky Charms. Is that
What?
they tasted awful.
They're not good.
Um, no, but it's kind of like the yellow note paper, the legal pads. It's a very sort of North American in its broadest sense thing. And I always thought if I ever write a script, I'm going to write it on the yellow legal pad. And when I saw some Lucky Charms on for sale, I thought, oh, I'll buy those. Let's have a look. But when I was examining, and the reason why I kept the box, I was examining it, and the more you actually look at it, the actual character there is incredibly reminiscent of something like a gnome or a
Hmm.
dwarf or something like that. But again, I suppose it's a little bit like fairies in general, isn't it, as well, where actual old characterizations and descriptions of these things like leprechauns, things like fairies, things like other forest dwelling or country, more moorland dwelling creatures as
Hmm.
well. They're often quite terrifying, actually.
Yeah,
Um,
mischievous. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Mm.
Yeah,
But
they're not there to do a jig and give you
yeah,
Lucky Charms.
give you
No,
money. Yeah, no,
no, not
no,
at all.
no.
No, that, like I said, all that was later construction in the
Mm,
original, or I should say in early mythology. No, it doesn't exist. Now you're
mm.
wondering where that box of cereal
I
got
am, I am. It's
to.
like, where was it gone?
Um, this is something I did not know,
Okay.
because I never heard of this, but why do you get pinched if you don't wear green on St. Patrick's Day?
Now, is that pinched as in physically
As in a
pinched?
physical pinch, yeah.
Okay, it's not being arrested.
No.
Um, uh, is it linked with luck? Is it like a good luck, bad luck thing?
I honestly, this was something I had to research, and it is difficult to say because apparently this custom seems to have grown up in parts of the US, specifically Chicago. If you don't wear green on St. Patrick's Day, you get pinched for not complying. A myth grew out of
Oh,
this, saying that if you wear green, the leprechaun that can't see you. But this is not something that ever came from Ireland.
no,
It
no.
seems like it was a way to get people who didn't side with the Irish rebels to wear green,
Right,
and that it
yeah,
was
yeah.
a guilt thing.
So in that sense, it's closer to crossing a picket line, isn't it? In that sense.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
it seems so.
yeah.
Growing up
Mm,
where I did, I never heard of this. So it seems like it's
no.
very limited to, but it's a thing in the States, and
Interesting.
very weird. So
Yeah.
a couple of bonus questions,
Okay.
which I know you will be able to answer.
Yeah. Okay.
Are Celtic knots Irish?
Depends which ones you mean and designed by whom. Like,
The image of the Celtic knot, what we would consider to be the Celtic knot, is, but the interlaced patterns, obviously, has
uh-huh.
its origins in the late Roman Empire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And knot patterns first appeared in the third and fourth centuries AD. and can also be seen on the Roman floor mosaics of that
Hmm.
time. It's
Yep.
also carved into stones all over Ireland that predate
Yep.
Irish, or rather, I should say, what people would consider to be
Yep.
Irish.
And then this
Yeah.
stuff was elaborated on across Northern Europe and came back in on itself and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's that, hence I didn't really answer your question, but I knew what I was talking about, so I gave myself a point there.
Yeah, good. Yes, there are many things that people associate as part of Ireland or Irish culture that
Yeah.
got taken up by the American New Age movement that are now associated with what we would call it pan-Celtism,
Yeah.
and things
Mm,
that just don't, like, for example, I went off on the phrase heaven and earth are only 3 feet apart, but in the thin places that distance is
yeah.
even shorter. That
Mm,
phrase, everybody says that's an ancient Celtic that is absolute nonsense. I mean,
no, no,
Druids didn't measure things in feet. Get out of here.
no,
It's
no.
ridiculous.
I think I agree. And I think I might have been guilty in the past of talking about um a thin time of the year, but in the context
So that is
yeah. So go on.
that did get associated with Samhain,
Yeah,
obviously. But thin places, no.
it's not a thing. No,
No, the veil
exactly.
thinning was a, I think that ended up being a Victorian construction when they are talking about the time of the year, and then obviously that got
Yeah,
associated with Samhain,
yeah.
because
Mm,
of what is celebrated at Samhain time.
yeah.
But
Well, in that
that
sense,
whole
death
phrase,
does feel closer, and
yeah, for
that makes
sure,
sense. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But
absolutely. And
also,
there are many
so,
different cultures that celebrate, death at
yeah.
the slowing time of the year.
No, absolutely. But also as well, this whole thing of thin places, it's really been taken on by. So if you go up to Holy Island,
Hmm.
Lindisfarne, up here on the northeast coast, um, y- whenever I go there, you really very almost annoyingly often will hear little groups of people going around saying, oh, of course this is one of the thin places, and and you have it's been adopted, this idea of so-called Celtic Christianity, by people who really don't understand that's referring to the relationship between insular
Hmm.
written styles, Celtic art styles that were coming through from the Ionian communities, and how they contrasted with the stuff from in Canterbury and also even from North Africa. Um, but it's been, as again, it's fed on itself and got to a
Hmm.
point now where almost, people will in the back of their minds be drawing in images of even leprechauns, God knows what, but into this idea of Celtic Christianity as though there's something. Uh, and hopefully, people at home may appreciate this, because again, it's an Irish problem, it's a Welsh problem as well. This idea that it's the tame wild, that
Hmm.
somehow having this nation next door especially for English culture, this nation next door that's a little bit a little bit a little bit mysterious with some hidden druidic knowledge is a safe way of dipping your toe into paganism, or a safe way of being a bit uncivilized. And it's again it's really deep rooted. Essentially it is a form of, if not racism, certainly xenophobia.
Yeah,
um
exactly. Yeah.
but it's something that people uh play into, because it also gives the people a sense of authenticity, oddly enough. So I know I have I have friends from Wales. I have friends from Scotland who really sort of love the idea that somehow they're attached to something that's somehow more authentic, not in a Christian sense, in the Celtic Christian sense, but in a sort of a cultural wild sense.
Hmm.
But that wildness, that roughness, that Celtic Christianity dipping your toe in paganism, but really you're still in the church, is all a comment on the perceived contrast between Englishness and the stuff that surrounds it. I always find that really interesting, and whenever I think about it again, it both annoys and fascinates me.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not angry about it, but I'd
I,
say because
I
it's
I have this
inevitable.
conversation with you and other people all the time where, it's
Yeah,
the same thing where people start tacking on this idea of Celtic Christianity. Like, for example, with the whole, like, the Celtic tree of life,
yeah,
and
yeah,
how that was a concept that was completely invented
mm,
by New Ageism. And
Yeah.
traditional Irish, and even what, there's no Celtic tree of life. That's nonsense.
No.
It's either
Mm,
Yggdrasil or nothing. And
mm,
but they added that on to, again, kind of be like, oh, the tree of life in the Bible is that, oh, it's the
yeah.
Celtic tree of life. And now you see from here to Connemara, you see all that, the Celtic
Mm,
tree with the top of the knots in the bottom roots,
mm-hmm,
and you
mm-hmm,
see it everywhere. And that
mm.
was completely invented. I mean, up to the jewelers who took it up and went, "Ooh, this is a thing that we can now use."
Yeah, yeah, I don't, and this is what I mean by I don't get too angry about it, in so much as it's now just part of the culture. It's just
Uh-huh.
part of something that floats through it. You can't really get away from it. But the fact that at its root is essentially either something that people are doing to themselves, or people that something which has been done to those people, that says you are different. Whether you think
Yes.
that being more wild is better or worse, you are different, fundamentally different.
Are
Uh,
you really
um,
King Arthur, Mark? Are you really King Arthur?
no, because I'm not that bloke who's protesting down at Stonehenge all the time. So obviously, he's Arthur Pendragon. Um, but yeah, it's that's yeah, it's an interesting one, and this is also why this sort of conversation, this sort of quiz, I think is interesting. Because it's an opportunity to explore some of those things without actually marching on London and you know burning the place down. Um, well, any more bonus questions?
On the subject,
Yep.
the last bonus question, which I know you're going to get right, Mark. I put
Okay.
it in here just for you.
Hmm.
Is the Green Man an Irish god?
Yeah. No. 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 I do believe it was you who recently reminded me that there's an Indian connection. Is there?
That's correct, yes. So,
Yeah.
Lady Raglan, again, Victorians ruin everything. Hashtag Victorians ruin everything. Lady Raglan mistakenly thought that the Green Man was a Celtic god, a Celtic symbol.
Right.
And the Green Man is not a Celtic god. We have no records of him at all in any Irish literature whatsoever. He is an Indian spirit appropriated from India in the 1500s.
Hmm.
In his lectures at Gresham College, historian and Professor Ronald Hutton traces the Green Man to India, stating that the component parts of Lady Raglan's construct, the Green Man, were dismantled. So nobody believes that anymore. The medieval
Uh-huh.
foliate heads that were studied by Kathleen Basford in 1978 and Mercia McDermott in 2003, obviously they were found that there's no connection to Irish at all. They were revealed to have been motif which traveled through the medieval Arabic Empire to Christian Europe, and it just
Right.
became popular. And you can even see the original sort of motif with the mustache coming out of the nose. Uh,
Interesting.
there, it became a decoration for monks' manuscripts, from which it spread to churches and then obviously to pubs. It's the big one, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people conflate it with the Green Knight or the
Hmm.
Wodewoes or Woodwoes, who is the European wild man motif. And then he got associated with May Day celebrations, but has absolutely zero to do with Ireland, Irish anything. And I keep seeing it all over the place. Like, oh, for Irish stuff, Celtic stuff. Green Man might be a spirit, and Green Man is definitely a depiction of a god, but he has nothing to do with Celt anything, and is
No.
certainly not Irish at
No.
all.
But yeah, they're like at Durham Cathedral. I think there might be a
Hmm.
green man in the Undercroft cafe area,
Yeah.
and people look out for him. Um, but
Same thing.
again,
But
it
it is very possible though that the Sheelanigi, the old woman holding her
yeah,
vulva open, that very possibly, we don't know if that's Irish or not, because she does appear on the continent as well, on churches and everything. So it is possible that she might have been just a church motif on the continent, but maybe not in Ireland. Maybe in
no,
Ireland it might be different. So if you want to contest that she as a motif might have been a god, yeah, sure, that is a question, but the
mm,
Green Man certainly not.
no, no. Uh, Interesting results.
All right.
Um,
So
yeah.
what's your results, Mark? Let's see
Well,
it.
the scores seem to be even. Yeah, 10 points all. It seems, unless I've missed out Did we have 20 questions?
No, I put the
Yeah.
two bonus questions for you. You
Okay.
know what? That's fine because we're gonna have our Easter quiz,
Uh-huh.
and maybe we'll win then. But that's okay. That's okay that we tied, because for both of us and for everybody watching, everybody gets the gift, not the luck of the Irish, but further reading.
Yay.
Yay! Further reading, you could read the wonderful article, The Curious Case of St. Patrick, on jstor.org. Uh,
Okay.
the Ancients with History Hit has an absolutely gorgeous deep dive into St. Patrick's life. I highly recommend the historical St. Patrick episode, as
Uh-huh.
well the medieval Irish podcast, which is run by several universities in Ireland. Just put up the historical St. Patrick as well, medieval Irish podcast. If you haven't read it, it's just a few weeks old. It's a baby one, but it is run by historians, so I do recommend enjoying that. History Extra
Uh-huh.
has St. Patrick's Day and who the Irish patron saint really was, plus America's first parade, traditions, etc. Professor Ronald Hutton's Blood and Mistletoe, The History of Druids in Britain, always a classic, out by Yale University Press in 2011. And I do recommend reading the history of the Irish penal laws of 1695 and reading about the Irish Rebellion of 1798, because once you
Okay.
do, especially the Irish Rebellion of 1798, I think you'll
Mm.
understand why St. Patrick's Day and St. Patrick's Day parades became a sort of a thing to be proud of, and a
Mm.
place where Irish people could express themselves while they
Mm.
were forced to live abroad.
Yeah.
And so there you have it. That's our wonderful St. Patrick's Day quiz that we are definitely going to get kids.
I think we're fine. Sure, it'll be grand.
It's just a big, you know yourself anyway. You know yourself.
Yeah.
That's
No, no,
that's
that was good.
the one of two. There are several Irish phrases that I love, but Asher, you know yourself, is probably my favorite one, because
Uh-huh.
you don't have to say anything after it. So, for example, when my Irish dance teacher, who is from Ireland, she has wonderful stories about the cultural exchange the cultural misunderstandings when she first came here 45 years ago. And whenever I see her, she's always, "Oh, how are you getting on?" And so I always say, "Oh, you know yourself," and that's it. That's it. That's the whole conversation, because it's you know how it is, and you don't, and everybody just goes, "Yep," and that's it. That's the end. You
Yep.
don't need to say
Yep.
anything else. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think one of Mrs. Soup's favorite things about living here in the northeast of England,
Mm-hmm.
and similar for me actually as well, is this very no matter the specific words, this very post-industrial, slightly ignored by power centers in the United Kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
sense of things could always be worse. And this is a very Irish
Yes.
humor thing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also, I think, a very working class northern thing. And essentially saying not bad, or could be worse, or this could, it's always like, well, I'm not dead, so you know. Okay. Uh, but yeah, it's
Yep.
been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.